Welcome. This is Gen Z, a podcast that explores Generation Z, who they are, how they're different from other generations, while also being an incredible blend of those who came before them. We explore what they think is cool, what moves them, and why they do what they do. I'm your host, Megan Grace, and it's so nice to have you here. Well, friends, we did it. This is it. It's the final episode of this season. It has been such a wonderful journey for the last year or so, spending time with you exploring Gen Z at work. For this episode, we're going to keep it simple, and we're going to recap on some of the highlights of this season. So there's no guess this episode, unless you count the insights of episodes past. You're stuck with me this time, so join me on this little trip down memory lane, and let's look back on some of the key highlights of this season.
This is William Tincup, and I'd like to direct you to a wonderful limited series podcast that Ryan and I recorded live at the ERE Recruiting Innovation Summit. We sat down with 20 recruiting and TA leaders from around the world to hear what today's best recruiters are doing to stay sharp, stay relevant, and stay ahead. It's called The Talent Shift. You'll love it. You'll find the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Listen, like, review, share. Do you?
All right, so we technically started our journey of exploring Gen Z at work in 2023 with our first episode, Gen Z at Work, featuring my research partner and co-author, Dr. Corey C. Miller. Where we started was to preview some of our upcoming work on exploring generations in the workplace. And honestly, we've learned a lot since then. Not to be too coy, we have some new insights and resources about our latest study in the workplace coming out soon. You'll hear more about that later. But in our time together since we last chatted with Corey, we've learned so much about Gen Z at work. We talked with work futurist Sophie Wade about how Generation Z is fueling the future of work. And we also connected with Harrison Lee and Abby Stassier, who shared more about how Gen Z is pursuing atypical working arrangements like the digital nomad lifestyle and building your own job. And how could we forget our friends at Deloitte Digital, Amelia Dunlap and Michael Pankowski, stopping by to share insights from their study on what Gen Z wants in the workplace, which really rounded out as a nice primer for what we were going to cover in 2024. So to catch you up, we picked up our learning journey about Gen Z in the workplace in early 2024 with a conversation about workplace learning and skilling with Sana Fouquet and Sydney Santos, who shared not only about the desire that Gen Z has for developing new workplace skills, but also how they are going about using technology like artificial intelligence to develop skills to prepare for the future, which gives us insight into the things that Gen Z will be looking for in their workplaces. I also spent time connecting with Rex Wild on the importance of authenticity and self-connection at work. What I loved about this conversation is how Rex shared the deep relationship of our self-identity and the work that we do, and how when we have interconnectedness in our expression of who we are, it can impact our productivity, how we work, and the ways we show up to work. I loved what Rex does to help to frame this idea of connection and authenticity as a way to be inclusive in the workplace and create an environment that people, not just in Gen Z, but of all generations, can feel welcomed in the places that they work. Christina Sugimoto of Wasserman NextGen stopped by to share insights on the research of Gen Z workplace perspectives. She shared how Gen Z is looking at work, what they're looking for, and gave us insight into the landscape of how Gen Z is looking for jobs and viewing the work they do. I loved this conversation with Christina because she brought the facts and she brings the research into this conversation. And honestly, it's fantastic when I get to connect with other people that are as data-driven in their mindset and understanding what's going on. And this honestly led perfectly into my conversation with Sophie O'Brien of Pollen Careers about navigating the modern job search. Sophie highlighted a pretty large gap that exists between Gen Z job seekers and the current hiring and recruitment system. The work she's doing with her company is helping to empower Gen Z job seekers and encourage employers to evolve their hiring practices. I appreciate when there's voices like Sophie's that come into a space and aren't scared to identify where there are issues and how systems are not serving people that are trying to operate within those systems. And Sophie's doing a lot of really great work of speaking truth to that situation while also working to empower and mentor Gen Z in the early talent career phase of their life. Dylan Diamond of the scheduling app Saturn stopped by to share perspectives on time and time management, which is a critical skill in transitioning into and succeeding in the workplace. Dylan helped us understand how Gen Z sees and manages time while identifying ways to support Gen Z in developing skills in time management. I think anyone that has worked or managed their work life knows how important that calendar can be to ensuring you have enough time to do good work, connect with the people that you need to connect with, and fulfill the responsibilities of a job. And we learn those habits and those skills so much earlier in life, and the work that Dylan and his team are doing really helps to amplify the need to learn this in a very intentional manner. And then after that, we spent so much time talking about what Gen Z wants in work and navigating the job search. We brought in Parker Pell of Abode HR to share a conversation around strategies for managing early career talent. Parker and his team have learned a lot in developing an HR management platform that is designed by and for Gen Z employees with the goal of boosting engagement and rethinking onboarding. I love the approach that Parker and their team at Abode take is that early career talent is not something that should be expendable, but it can be a really valuable resource when engaged in the right way. And onboarding, training, and management is such a critical piece of that. And in preparation for the election, we took a moment to explore how companies and organizations can play a role in the civic process. Joined by Vaughn Badgley of MTV Entertainment, we looked at the ways that companies, organizations, and community groups can specifically engage Gen Z voters and encourage their participation in the democratic process. It was fascinating to learn from Vaughn and the work of the MTV team about how they've not only shifted this mindset of student civic participation, but also thinking about the corporate element of responsibility that companies and organizations have in encouraging democratic participation among its employees in a nonpartisan fashion. And we rounded out the year with a discussion with Tracy Chernoff, the host of Bringing the Human Back to Human Resources podcast. We really thought about how Gen Z is reimagining human resources and workplace environments. What I loved is that we demystified the role of HR in organizations and chatted about the way that Gen Z is encouraging us all to think differently about work and approach our professional lives with a relationship-driven mindset. To put it simply, together we covered a lot and we learned a lot. And I want to send a big thank you to you and to the guests that joined me this year to share about their knowledge and stories. It's hard to take an entire season and distill it down to just a few sentences. I kind of feel like I'm trying to do a Reader's Digest, or in this case, a Listener's Digest of some of the biggest learning points of the year. And how do you even begin to summarize a year's worth of learning? I'm going to do my best. So here are 3 key things that stuck out to me in this season and the episodes that we shared. First, what Gen Z wants from work is not all that different from previous generations. What is different is that they might be saying it at younger ages, and they're looking for stability, opportunities to grow, and transparent leadership. I think these are things that benefit members of all generations and are something that we can pay attention to. There's nothing wrong with seeking out effective leadership and making sure that you want to work for the right people for the right reason. I think we can all agree that that is something that we can applaud Gen Z for understanding so early in their careers. Next, what is going to keep Gen Z in a role or with an organization is honestly viewing loyalty as a two-way street, and that requires continued focus on building meaningful relationship. Trust and loyalty go hand in hand, but it's not something that we can just expect Gen Z or any new employees to give us as employers and leaders. And lastly, for collaboration across generations to effectively take place, in my mind, relationships have to be at the forefront of our priorities. That applies to both Gen Z in the workplace and those who lead, manage, and work with Gen Z. There's a great opportunity for Gen Z employees to grow by building strong relationships with the people they work with. If you're a Gen Z listening, make sure you reach out to your mentor or your role model to spend some time with them and catch up. You never know what that conversation could lead to. And for those who lead, manage, or work with Gen Z, we have such an opportunity to support the growth and development of the next generation of leaders and maybe even learn something from the Gen Z that we work with. I feel so lucky that I do get to learn from members of Gen Z and the work that I do, and it's something that I never take for granted. I know that I feel more prepared to work with the Gen Z in my life and look forward to opportunities to integrate these insights into my work. And I truly believe that sometimes we build up the idea of working across generations to be navigating a really complex cavern using a tightrope to do so. The reality is that to create a bridge across generations, especially when it comes to the workplace, requires the foundation of understanding one another and taking time to meaningfully do so. I've said a lot about what I've learned and my thankfulness for that, but I would love to hear from you. If you're listening to this on Spotify, I'd love for you to leave a comment and tell me what your favorite episode of this season was, or something that you found to be especially insightful. This is such a great way for us to stay connected, especially as I prepare for next season.
Hey everybody, got a quick question for you. Is your job easy, stress-free, and full of rainbows and sunshine every single day? Yeah, I'd say that's a big fat no. Hi, I'm David Noe, host of Speakeasy HR, presented by Payroll Partners, and proud to be part of the Work-Defined community. Take a step down into my Speakeasy live on LinkedIn and YouTube, where we tackle HR and business challenges through raw, uncut, unfiltered conversations. This is HR like you've never heard it before. Bold, real, and full of practical takeaways. Real guests, bold insights, authentic conversations that drive change. Catch every episode on demand through your favorite podcast platform or all the content at speakeasyhr.com.
So I want to thank again all of our incredible guests this season. The show has been such a joy to create because I get to hang out with some really incredible people, think about interesting topics, and share meaningful stories. But also a huge thank you to you for lending your ears and joining me on this journey to learn more about Gen Z. While I love to chit chat with just about anybody that'll listen, this podcast isn't just a place for me to be nosy, ask questions, and talk with friends. However, that is something I really do love about being able to podcast. To me, this podcast is a learning journey, and it always has been. I appreciate you for saying yes to going on the journey, and I hope you continue to do so when we come back next season with more episodes. I'm already working on content, and I can't wait to share it with you after the winter break, maybe a little bit later into the spring. So if you have any ideas, now is a great time to let me know. Please feel free to drop me a note just to say hi, or even to share some ideas for a topic you would like explored or a guest you think needs to be featured. As always, you can find some contact information on my website, meganmgrace.com. That's meganmgrace.com/podcast. We do really have some exciting things coming up in the new year, so be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss any new episodes. Additionally, I have some semi-related news that I'll be announcing in the new year, but probably before that we release some new episodes. So a great way to stay up to date on some of those new things coming out is to connect with me on social media, whether that's LinkedIn or on Instagram. I'm going to be sharing on both of those spaces. You can find me on social media with the handle at Megan M. Grace. Again, MEGHANM Grace. And one last thank you to Leah Kramer. We know her, we love her. She's the Gen Zer behind the scenes, editing this podcast and making it possible. I really couldn't do it without Leah, and she's such a great thought partner, thinking out where we can take things next. So if you are ever in need for podcast editing services, this is my full endorsement of Leah Kramer, and I'm happy to share her contact information. I love being able to sign off and say this. Thank you again for stopping by for this episode and this season. Let's continue this conversation, and we'll chat soon.